Hey everybody, Dr. Dave Marquis here, and I had a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you about a topic that is generally important to all human beings, and actually I'll extrapolate that out to all animals, and that has to do with libido. I want to address it from a point of view that many people may have not thought about. Many of the pharmaceuticals that are directed towards that wording or that concept are really more directed just at circulation. And many people don't realize that. So like when you look at many of the male enhancement drugs, and many times on the female side as well, you're using drugs that are basically enhancing circulation to the genitals. Well, I want to take that back one step, because libido is not just the act of intimacy. There's so much more around that, and much of it has to do with your mindset, your hormones, and how your neurochemistry is actually working for you and for how you're interrelating with those around you. So where I'm going with that is I see so many patients come in. There's 5 common things that I'll see when patients come in and they'll give me their hit list. The most common one is fatigue. Everybody universally is tired. Number 2, it's going to be pain. And then number 3, there's usually something going on gastrointestinally. Number 4, it's usually going to be some type of hormonal imbalance. And number 5, it's usually going to be libido. So if I was to look at all the thousands of patients that have come through my office and try and hone down on the commonalities, those 5 things would be there. Certainly there's outliers, but those are the most common. So with libido being the 5th most common one, I wanted to address that in the context that I've observed it over the years. And so many people, yes, their hormones are not regulated appropriately, and we can help them with that, but it doesn't necessarily fix the libido side of things in the way that they would hope. It can. I don't want to minimize the value of that, because many people are walking around with virtually no testosterone and no estrogen, and their progesterone's off, and it messes them up in a lot of different ways. From the moisture on their body, to their skin and hair, to how they think, if they can think. I mean, a lot of people, when their sex hormones drop down, their frontal lobe just kind of checks out, and they cannot focus for the life of them. So, getting your hormones regulated is really high priority. But the one that I wanted to talk to you about is circulation to the brain and how that impacts libido for individuals. We fundamentally have 2 brains. We have our primitive brain, which is where our fight-flight center lives, but it's also our rage center, and it's also much of our primitive sexual drive. And then we have our higher brain, our cerebral cortex, and our frontal lobe. Now, our frontal lobe is so important for this topic because it's how you reason. It's our frontal lobe that helps us to reason through moments like that when we're engaging with other individuals, and allows us to actually feel comfortable in that moment and comfortable in our own skin. Well, what I see as we age is that many people are actually experiencing frontal lobe degeneration because they either have overcooked it with mismanagement of blood sugar and insulin over the years, they've bruised it through some type of trauma, they can have the hormonal imbalances that I just mentioned previously, or a combination of all of those things, and what ends up is that the blood vessels to that region actually become compromised, which is why so many people will reach for some of the botanicals that can help with that. Some of the things like vinpocetine or huperzine or ginkgo, managing the blood sugar and the diet at night so that their circulation stays well, nitric oxide, all of those things come into play to help feed this frontal lobe. Well, if you're in that category where you're getting to a point in life where dietarily and stress-wise, you've allowed your hormones to become borderline at best, and you've allowed for some of these processes to occur to change the dynamics of how circulation's not getting to the frontal lobe, you're going to experience a change in your libido and your personality. and how other individuals interact with you. And so this is an area that I really like to have people investigate and find out, what can I do to make sure that my vascularity from top to bottom is working and I've got all my hormones on board, because then you're going to get back parts of that individual that you've lost over the years. So realize that libido is not found in a pill per se. However, there are things that can help an individual with all the different facets that make up that whole concept of libido. So you'll find things on the market. I mean, I've got some here that really do help individuals through that process of getting circulation going again, but there's also ownership. You've got to take ownership and say, okay, what have I actually done through the course of my life that has allowed me to get to this point? And get a proper evaluation with a functional med doc so that they can look at you in total and see, okay, are you dealing in a fight-flight state most of the day, so your sympathetic nervous system is actually driving your behavior? What are your hormones actually looking like on a regular basis, and what are you doing dietarily and exercise-wise to keep them balanced? Do you have adequate circulation not only to your genitals but also to your brain so that you can think and function and make that whole process work? And then, depending on how all of those answers play out, that's when you start reaching for some of these things, some of the stuff that I just mentioned. I love nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is actually a natural precursor that your body makes, or it's supposed to, that allows for a dilation of all of your blood vessels. So when you're looking at erectile health, whether it be male or female, you're looking at nitric oxide, and many people don't manage that well. So that's something that you'll find precursors to in many of the libido formulas. So like I've got a couple here, one's called a Libido F, the other one's a Libido M, and basically they're built around some of the botanicals that would push those pathways. And those types of things, when you're using it as a crutch, as it should be, because the goal is really to change the performance and underlying condition of the body as a whole so that you don't need the crutches, but they are useful. You would use those on a daily basis around the time where you're hoping to have enhanced performance. So you would give yourself about a 2-hour window around the use of some of those nitric oxide precursors and some of the things that would enhance circulation to the genitals. Now, thinking about dietary input, many people associate alcohol around the concept of libido, and I want to reinforce the knowledge that although it does change your inhibitions, it literally has an inhibitory effect on your actual performance. So alcohol should not be looked at as a great tool for libido per se. Using the circulatory pathways and making sure that you're handling your blood sugar appropriately, that would be a higher priority, much higher priority. Making sure that you've got your hormones balanced and you're not shooting yourself in the foot dietarily by suppressing hormonal output, that's another high priority. But you're not going to find that by consuming volumes of alcohol that it's going to really help out in that sense, and in fact it'll hinder. You'll find that you end up with more microvascular compromise over time when that becomes a habit, and I see that a lot in patients. So what I would encourage you to do is get a fundamental workup on your own health so that you can find out where you're at in all the categories that I just mentioned, and realize that there are some tools in terms of teas and tinctures and some of the botanicals that can be used as crutches to help people with the circulation side and even some of the hormonal shift. And to the extent that you apply those on a regular basis and increase blood flow not only downstairs but also upstairs, you're going to find that your overall well-being and functionality of your libido will improve long term. Have a great day.